On behalf of the School of Education and the Alumni Board of Directors, it's a pleasure to welcome you to this evening's Distinguished Alumni Award dinner. I'd like, if I could, to take a moment to recognize my fellow board members who are in attendance this evening. Will all board members in attendance please stand? Thank you. We appreciate your service to the School of Education and the university. My next role is to introduce our dean, and I've got a whole script here and I'm going to ignore it.
Excellent.
You know, when you're the president, you can do any damn thing you want to do, so I'm going to ignore it.
We know that.
I think all know that Gerardo is in his last year after 15, presiding over the School of Education. And we all know that we will miss him immeasurably. I think we are encumbered most, at all levels, in almost any endeavor, by those who are too careful about their work. Too careful in terms of, I don't want to do anything to rock the boat, I don't want to do anything that might jeopardize my job, etc., etc. Dean Gonzalez is the antithesis of that kind of individual. Never reckless, but never timid. I think all of us would say emphatically that if we look back 15 years ago, are the people entering the School of Education better prepared today or 15 years ago? And the answer is a very obvious and emphatic today, so much better prepared. Are the graduates who come out of the School of Education better prepared to teach young people at all levels than they were 15 years ago? And the answer is the same, an emphatic yes. I think we know that this is not a good time in lots of ways as it pertains to education. Some would even say it's a crisis. When we think about Dean Gonzalez and we think about his colleagues at Purdue or Ball State, Indiana State, or elsewhere, it's very obvious who has stood the tallest and who's taken positions the strongest, whether it be with the state legislature, whether it be with the State Board of Education, whether it would be with any entity. Dean Gonzalez has put himself on the line again and again and again. And I think all of us have a great appreciation for that and a great respect for that. My favorite American revolutionary was Thomas Paine. He was kind of a rabble-rouser in a lot of ways. But during the revolution, when the country was on the precipice, or not the non-country, our revolution was on the precipice of collapse, he used his pen, wielded as a mighty sword, to influence those to rally around the cause. My favorite quote out of the crisis was, "These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the duty of their country. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman." Well, Gerardo Gonzalez is no summer soldier, and he is no sunshine patriot, but he indeed deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Our Dean, Gerardo Gonzalez.
Well, thank you, Doug, for those moving words. I think what he's trying to say is that I'm a slow learner. I am truly honored to not only serve as dean of this great community we call the School of Education family, but to represent the alumni, faculty, staff, friends of the School of Indiana University and what it represents. The traditions of Indiana University are exceptionally strong. Chancellor Wells really set the tone for all of us at a time when it was inappropriate to speak about certain matters, and he championed the rights of every faculty member and indeed every citizen to speak their mind. And I think that's what makes Indiana University strong. That's what makes the academy strong. And it's an accident of time that I was called upon to speak on controversial and difficult issues, but I am certain that anyone who is called upon to serve as dean of an academic unit as distinguished as the School of Education, this great institution, would have done the same. But thank you so very much, Doug, for your kind words, and to all of you for being here tonight. This is a restless crowd, I can tell. Now, as Dean of the Indiana University School of Education, I have the privilege of working with tremendously talented faculty, staff, and students who are truly making a difference close to home and around the world. Through their outstanding work, the School of Education literally touches every corner of the globe. From our deep relationship supporting urban schools in Indiana, to our work in rebuilding the education system in Afghanistan, from placing student teachers in Chicago public schools, the Navajo Nation, and 18 other countries across 6 continents, to provide counseling support to underserved middle school children right here in Bloomington. In these ways and in so many more, the School of Education is tackling the most pressing issues of our day and indeed making a world of difference. But nothing makes me as proud as the accomplishment of our alumni. Over 68,000 strong and living around the world. It is the work of these talented and dedicated individuals that makes the world a better place through the power of education. Tonight, we gather to honor 4 such alumni who have dedicated their lives to doing just that. These individuals have excelled in their professional and civic lives, and in so doing, have brought great pride to the School of Education and Indiana University. But before we honor this year's awardees, I'd like to recognize a few other special guests with us here tonight. First, I'd like to thank tonight's musical guest, the one and only IU Emeritus Jazz Trio, Lou Polsgrove on saxophone, Gary Potter on piano, and Dave Hooper on bass. Thank you, guys. I am also pleased to recognize 2 previous Distinguished Alumni Award recipients in attendance this evening. Harmon Baldwin. Harmon, where are you? And Sue Talbot. Will you please stand? Sue is also a former Indiana Teacher of the Year and University Trustee. And we have another former IU trustee with us tonight, P.A. Mack. P.A., will you stand and be recognized? And though Doug already recognized our alumni board members, I would like to add my personal appreciation for their advocacy and service under Doug's outstanding leadership. Please join me in thanking them once again. We also have a number of former members of the university's senior leadership team with us tonight, and I'd like to recognize them individually. Kurt Simic, President Emeritus of the Indiana University Foundation. Kurt. Ken Beckley, former President and CEO of the Indiana University Alumni Association. Ken. Terry Claypax, Indiana University Vice President Emeritus. Charlie Nelms, former Vice President for Institutional Development and Student Affairs, and most recently, Chancellor of North Carolina Central University. I have not seen Charlie here tonight, but I thought he would be here. He is? Okay. So he'll be joining maybe. Howard Mellinger, former Dean of the Indiana University School of Education. Howard. Dick McKay, former Vice Provost for Student Affairs. Dick. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge a few other special guests with us here tonight as well. Stacy McCormick is the 2011 Indiana Teacher of the Year and also serves on an alumni board of directors. Stacy, also an Astron educator. Steve Moberly and Nancy Hamlin are both former national chairs of the IU Alumni Association. Steve and Nancy. We also have several members of the class of 1963 Anniversary Scholarship Committee with us tonight. Will you all stand and be recognized? Members of the 1963 class. And many of you are likely aware that our very own Chancellor's Professor Emeritus, George Koo, just recently received, just this past week actually, the IU President's Medal for Excellence. George, would you please be recognized? It is such an honor to serve as Dean of a school that has such accomplished alumni, advocates, and friends. Without the work of individuals like those just recognized, our reach will be more narrow and our impact less significant. But it goes without saying that the heart of the school is our talented and committed students and faculty. Several of our students, current faculty, and emeritus faculty are with us tonight. Please stand and accept our appreciation for all you have done and will continue to do to serve the school and advance education throughout the world. Where our faculty and students, please stand. Thank you all for your leadership and tireless contribution to the School of Education and Indiana University. And last but not least, my wife, Marjorie. Now, you know, the right thing to say would be, she has been quietly by my side. But those of you who know Marjorie know she would not do anything quietly. Thank you, honey, for being here. It is now my pleasure to recognize this year's Distinguished Alumni Award honorees. The first recipient we honor tonight is Richard E. Bishop, a native of Grosse Pointe, Michigan. Bishop holds bachelor and master's degrees and a doctorate in higher education administration from the IU School of Education. Bishop began his career in 1964 as the first University Relations Director at the new Indiana Purdue campus in Fort Wayne. He went on to work in the IUB Alumni Office, support the university's sesquicentennial campaigned and served the Dean's Office of the School of Education. While earning his doctorate, he served in the university's president office under Joseph L. Sutton and John W. Ryan. Upon graduation, Bishop held positions in University Division, School of Public and Environmental Affairs, and Radio Television Services. From 1988 to 2005, Bishop was a key member of the IU Foundation's leadership team. During that period, fundraising grew from $35 million annually to more than $100 million annually. And the endowment grew from $214 million to $1.2 billion. These efforts provided greater student access to higher education, increased faculty research support, and propelled Indiana's flagship public university into the 21st century. In retiring, he continues to support the university in many ways, including service to the IU Foundation and the School of Education Center for Human Growth, and by establishing the Nancy Harvey Bishop Student Support Fund in memory of his late wife. Bishop also hosts a weekly program on the university's public radio station, WFIU, and actively participates in the local arts scene. Bishop's contribution to Indiana University have been widely recognized, earning him such honors as the State of Indiana's Distinguished Alumni Award, the IU Foundation Herman B. Wells Legacy Award, and the creation of the Richard E. Bishop Scholarship. Dick, you represent the highest level of achievement and have been a stalwart friend of Indiana University and the School of Education. I am honored to recognize you as an Indiana University School of Education Distinguished Alumni. Will you please join me?
I do have a little set of remarks here. I'll make them brief, but this is my chance. Thank you, Dean Gonzalez and members of the selection committee for this singular recognition. Someone told me that there was a solar eclipse recently. Speaking personally, I'm not shocked and not surprised. Some of my old professors would agree with them. It's always great to see the good dean's delightful wife, Margie, and my thanks and appreciation go to Jonathan Purvis, Executive Director of Development and Alumni Affairs at the school, his remarkable associates, Dana Cummings, Megan Murrow-Burkett, and his talented colleagues. My admiration obviously goes to you all, of course. I was fortunate enough to grow up in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. I arrived on the Bloomington campus and moved into my eclectic fraternity house. I was in a state of, well, shock. We had 96 in my Fort Wayne high school class. IUB in those days numbered 13,000. I had some growing up to do quickly. I set my sights on an education degree with telecommunications. History and speech were minors. Those experiences changed my life. Years ago, my good friend and colleague Kurt Simic came across a quote attributed to G.B. Shaw. "Everywhere we look, caring hands have preceded us." Perfect for what we do now, but so meaningful to me in those undergraduate years. How fortunate I was. The sensitive, caring Iowan Phil Peake, Associate Dean of the school in the 1950s, was one of those caring hands who saw me through. So were the members of the telecom faculty. Talented folks we knew as on a first-name basis, unheard of in those paper chase days of the 50s and 60s. We learned and had fun doing it. We quickly fell under the spell of the incomparable then President Herman B. Wells and our beloved Dean of Students, himself an education faculty member, Bob Schaefer, who incidentally is still with us at 99. Always accessible. They were an unbeatable pair. And we learned so much from their wise and perceptive counsel. My first position, as the Dean said, was with the Fort Wayne campus, in 1964, and IU Chancellor Ralph Broyles and his wife Kay were valuable mentors in those days. Returning to campus with the legendary Claude Rich in the alumni office, my master's in doctoral studies proved once again the influence of caring hands. You will, of course, recognize some of the names that meant so much to me at that critical moment in my life, and possibly yours. Around 1970, I was fortunate enough to serve under Dean David Clark, and he brought, David came from Ohio State, and he brought 4 of his colleagues, administrative colleagues, to campus, and we smart guy graduate students, we call them the Dave Clark 5, but not to their face. I am eternally grateful to the members of my doctoral committee, Professors August Gus Iberly, his wife Ann, Glenn Ludlow and his wife Bee, among others. Also Maurice Mack McGlasson, Betty Greenleaf, and Marianne Mitchell were influential and inspiring. Following the doctorate, I did some years with the newly formed Public Environmental Affairs School and their dynamic founding dean, Chuck Bonser, and I'm grateful to Chuck as well. Caring hands. All of this brings us to the fall of 1988. When I returned to campus in 1966 in the Alumni Association, I met a guy by the name of Kurt Sinek, who had been a campus leader in the early 60s and now was Bill Armstrong's associate in the IU Foundation. We had similar missions, and when Kurt left in 1971 for important posts in 5 major universities, we remained in communication. One of my heroes, JFK, was quoted as saying, "There's a 2-word formula for getting the most out of life: live dangerously." Well, Kurt had just returned to Bloomington as the president of the IU Foundation following 5 years as vice chancellor at Berkeley. We had a famous or infamous lunch in the Tudor room, where we can still point out the table today. And the rest, as they say, is history. We served with an absolutely incredible group of friends and colleagues for 20 wonderful years at the IU Foundation. I was so fortunate to be among that group, some of whom are with us tonight, and I'm so grateful I know you. Those carrying hands in those days included our board of directors, brilliant and generous, and our donors, loving critics some, but their caring concern produced the record contributions so vital to IU's service to society. I'd like to name just a few. The pleasure of working with these people. Barbara Jacobs and family, generous donors to education and music. The Jacobs School, by the way, has just been named the #1 music school in the nation. I don't know whether you're aware of that. In the nation, over Juilliard and over Curtis. That's an amazing achievement. Larry and Lucy Glaubinger, athletics and hundreds of scholarship awards, and the Art Museum benefits as well. Bill and Rose Mays, the Neil Marshall Center, among so many others. Jesse and Beulah Cox, multi-millions to the scholarships on 2 campuses. Danny Danielson, still active at 90, and a myriad of worthy projects. Bill and Gail Cook, need no introduction to you. With their loyalty and generosity to the School of Education, the dedication and compassion of Dr. Clarence and Blanche Boone. Just the beginning. Kurt's friend, Dr. William B. Boyd, President Emeritus of the University of Oregon and the Johnson Foundation, accepted our invitation to address a major donor dinner in 1989. He gave us a marvelous quote that we've used since. Philanthropy and scholarship are separately among the most powerful influences shaping our future, and together their power to improve the human condition is unsurpassed. That, my friends, has been the catalyst for everything we do. And in retirement, we're still doing it. We tend to relationships, as Kurt said. I want to thank my Grosse Pointe family, Dr. Mark and Judy Weber, my beloved fraternity brothers and their terrific wives, my foundation colleagues, Bloomington friends, town and gown, my family physician for 56 years, Dr. Frank Rismellis, and his wife Becky, who are back here. Frank, you know more about me than I do. The school's former faculty and administrators, the Purvises, former trustees and spouses, and significant others, for being here this evening and doing all of us the honor of their presence. There is, however, one person missing this evening, and those of us who know her would agree. My dear wife, Nancy, of 30 years, had a distinguished career in counseling, in the school system, in the courts, and in private practice. She should be here to share this moment with all of us. She left us in 2007, another victim of cancer. She is certainly here in spirit, and for even that, I'm grateful. Again, my deep appreciation, my dear Dean, members of the selection committee, fellow honorees. I am so pleased and thrilled to be a part of this crowd. And to my good friends and colleagues for making this moment so indelible. Thank you.
Our second recipient of this year's Distinguished Alumni Award is Shaun Harper. Harper is on the faculty in the Graduate School of Education, Africana Studies, and Gender Studies at the University of Pennsylvania, where he also serves as Executive Director of the Center for the Study of Race and Equity in Education. Professor Harper's research examines race and gender in education, equity trends and racial climates on college campuses, Black and Latino male student success in high school and higher education, and college student engagement. He is author of over 90 peer-reviewed journal articles and other academic publications. Review of Research in Education, Journal of Higher Education, Journal of College Student Development, the Review of Higher Education, and Teachers College Record are some journals in which Harper's research is published. His 11 books include Student Engagement in Higher Education, College Men and Masculinities, and Advancing Black Male Student Success from Preschool through the PhD. The American Educational Research Association presented him its 2010 Early Career Award and 2014 Relating Research to Practice Award. He also received the 2008 Association for the Study of Higher Education Early Career Award, the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, Sports Illustrated, Chronicle of Higher Education, Inside Higher Ed, and over 400 other media outlets have quoted Harper and highlighted his research. He has appeared in CNN, ESPN, C-SPAN, and NPR. Professor Harper earned his bachelor's degree from Albany State, a historically black university in Georgia, and a PhD from Indiana University. Shaun, where are you? Right here, right in front of us. Shaun, you are truly a force in the field of higher education. It is my honor to recognize you as a distinguished alumnus of the Indiana University School of Education.
Thank you. Tomorrow is my birthday. This is a perfect birthday gift. Thank you so much, Dean Gonzalez. This may seem a bit unusual, but I would like to start by sharing with you an excerpt from the final chapter in my latest book, Advancing Black Male Student Success from Preschool through PhD. Vanderbilt University was Ian's top choice for doctoral study, but he was denied admission. Despite numerous indicators of academic accomplishment, including 3.5 and 3.9 cumulative GPAs in his bachelor's and master's degree programs, as well as strong advocacy from the faculty in the higher education program at Vanderbilt. The dean there denied Ian's admission to the program because she thought his GRE scores were too low. Don't worry, it wasn't Dean Gonzalez, some other dean, right? Ian took the GRE 4 times, once upon the request of the department chair at Vanderbilt. 990 was his highest score. The faculty petitioned the dean on his behalf. She was unwilling to see beyond his GRE score. It was her sole basis for disregarding the will of the faculty to admit this applicant. Perhaps it was best that Vanderbilt rejected Ian. He was offered admission to 3 other doctoral programs, including one at Indiana University, where he had recently completed his master's degree. He chose to stay at Indiana. 3 years later, Ian earned a PhD from the 5th highest ranked program in his field. Now, there are several noteworthy aspects of Ian's 3-year doctoral journey that I wish to share with you here tonight. First was the representation of students of color in his program. The IU School of Education has a storied history of consistently attracting African American students to his higher education doctoral program. Ian's enrollment year was no different. He was never the only person of color in any of his courses. In fact, the year he graduated, so did 5 other HESA doctoral students of color. Throughout their time in the program, these and other students worked collaboratively on research, studied together, they read and offered feedback on each other's papers and dissertations. They provided tremendous social and emotional support to each other, all of which was essential in a predominantly white college town. Surprisingly, their time together in Bloomington was fun. Lifelong friendships and collaborative relationships were born there. There was one African American female professor in the HESA program when Ian started. Another was hired at the end of his first year. The one Latina assistant professor was denied tenure. She and Ian were really close. Every male faculty member in the department was white. There were only 2 or 3 black male faculty members in the entire IU School of Education at that time. Notwithstanding the shortage of faculty of color, white professors were particularly good at supporting black HESA students. Faculty members neither dissuaded nor deemed unimportant the pursuit of research topics pertaining to people of color. Put differently, black students in the PhD program were not told that studying black things would somehow disadvantage them or undermine their academic credibility. Hence, most students of color conducted research on race and equity-related topics about which they authentically cared. Ian's dissertation, as a matter of fact, was on black male undergraduates. Upon completing his PhD, Ian received 5 job offers and one of the most coveted National Dissertation of the Year awards. 8 years later, he earned tenure at an Ivy League university in one of the 10 highest ranked programs in his field. At every juncture in Ian's career, his dissertation chair, one of the 5 most cited scholars in the field, consistently proved to be his most reliable champion and supporter. Generally speaking, I believe every doctoral student of color should have the kind of experience that Ian had right here at the IU School of Education. But unfortunately, most do not. I am Ian. I am therefore extremely grateful to all who were involved in co-creating with me an inspiring yet unusual narrative of a black male graduate student at a predominantly white university. I am especially grateful to Lori Patton Davis, my cohort mate, who very quickly became my best friend and academic spouse. I will be forever indebted to George Koo, who has been the best role model and academic dad imaginable. I also greatly appreciate Don Hostler, John Bean, Andrea Walton, Deborah Faye Carter, Mary Howard Hamilton, Guadalupe Anaya, and other faculty here who taught me much of what I know about U.S. higher education. I thank George and them for seeing promise in me beyond my GRE scores. Perhaps for the first time in my career, I actually feel distinguished. Thank you for choosing to honor me in this way. And thank God Vanderbilt didn't admit me. I will just conclude by saying that this award from a place that gave so much to Ian means so much to me. Thank you.
Our third recipient tonight is Jann Keenan. As a trailblazer and national leader in the field of health literacy, Keenan works tirelessly to close the health equity gap. She is the recipient of the Maryland Governor's Award, the Maryland House of Delegates, and Black Legislative Caucus citations for her leadership and vision in promoting cultural competency. Often recognized for exemplifying civic commitment, Keenan actively serves on the board of directors for many charitable organizations, spearheading countless initiatives for them. Keenan opened the Keenan Group, Inc. in 1995. She is the president of the social marketing and instructional design firm and is a strategic partner for the Institute of Healthcare Advancement. She is a founding partner of Health Literacy Innovations, creator of the nation's first interactive health literacy software tool. A featured presenter, she offers lively workshops, webinars, and keynote presentations throughout the United States. Keenan writes and designs award-winning health curriculum, websites, videos, and booklets for government agencies, universities, pharmaceutical hospitals, hospital corporations, and nonprofit organizations. She also manages education, research and evaluation projects, and translates scientific research into actionable information for educators, health professionals, and policymakers. She creates and executes comprehensive health initiatives for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, National Institutes of Health, Agency for Health Care Research and Quality, Yale University, Johns Hopkins Hospitals, Sanofi, Adventist, and Pfizer, among others. Keenan was integral in developing the easy-to-read labeling currently used in all U.S. over-the-counter drug products. She is the author of various peer-reviewed articles and conference papers focusing on health behaviors and is the co-author of You Can Quit Smoking. She received 9 NIH Gold Level Awards for outstanding plain language, writing, and design. Keenan holds a BA in English and Telecommunications and an MS and EDS in Instructional Systems Technology from Indiana University. She lives happily with her large and loving family on the East Coast. Jann, will you join us up here? Jann, you are a luminary in the field of health literacy and education. It makes me very proud to honor you as a distinguished alumnus of the IU School of Education.
Dean Gonzalez, thank you for that most warm welcome. I extend my thanks to the selection committee and to my nominator, fellow instructional systems technology colleague, Barry Neal. I'm fortunate today to have my very, very first teacher here in the audience, my sister. Oh, wow. I was her star pupil, her sole pupil, and our classroom was at the far end of our bedroom with the little wooden chairs. She and my parents instilled this grand love of learning that continues to burn inside me today. I'm very grateful. Now, I really have to call this a wow moment. I'm frequently at a loss for words. In earnest, this is the most meaningful award that I've ever received or I expect to receive. It's kind of my little Oscar. I love it. I'm deeply touched to be named a distinguished alumnus of the Indiana University School of Education, and I'm proud to be in the company of the other 3 alumni today. For months now, I found myself singing Back Home Again in Indiana. I even looked up the Indy 5 version of it. I'd be singing in airport terminals, in between being on mute on the phone and conference calls. And, well, here's the real coup. My husband I heard him humming it in the shower, but the good thing is my boy's from Illinois. So, walking today on the campus through Dunn Meadow, I realized that I really am so much back home again. I might have left Bloomington 30 years ago, 30 and a smidge, but this area has never left me. I'm actually thinking of doing a boomerang. What, a bloomerang? Yeah. I had the opportunity of earning 3 degrees while I was at IU. And I've always felt that attending Indiana University was one of the very wisest decisions that I've ever made. Second to marrying my husband, David. He is such a keeper. We have raised a quill full of children together, 7, and I'm very grateful for my husband to being such a wonderful partner and encouraging me to follow my dream. Let me tell you a little bit about where that dream began. My path at IU and my ultimate career direction was not on the original plan. I was law school bound, and it just wasn't connecting for me. So even if there's lawyers in the room, just for me personally, it wasn't connecting. And so I talk about the road less traveled. I decided, was I going to go through Dunn Meadow? I was going to go over to Rose Well House, and I thought I'd go to Rose Well House. It was a beautiful day. It was 2 days before my birthday, February, and I ran into an old pal of mine who had gotten into the IST department. He said, you've kind of been on the fence about what you're going to do. I have someone I think that you would like to meet. And he said, I'm going down to see this Dr. Dennis Pett. He's my chairperson. Would you like to come with me? I said, sure. And at the time, the IST department was in Mitchell Hall. It was an old ROTC barracks, right? I loved it. It kind of had that little funkiness about it, hardwood floors, and had this great big old sofa. It's pretty neat. So I actually went in, met Dr. Pett. Everybody called him Denny. And he looked uncannily like my father. And he turned out to be my academic father. He was a wonderful mentor. But my experience was not unique. My other fellow IST students would tell you that their professors had that same kindred relationship with them. In addition to Dr. Pett, there was Dr. Warren Stevens. He held office hours on that couch I was telling you about, that burgundy couch, where we students would sit around and talk about education, adult learning theory, or what's the best aperture. And it was years later that I thought, did he really even have an office with a door? I don't think so. I'm laughing at my own jokes. That is such a bad sign. I had the great honor also of being at the school during the time when Malcolm Flemings and Ivor K. Davies wrote their seminal book on instructional design. Boy, it was a keeper. It was great. It was nothing short of brilliant and cutting edge, and I often referred to it. I really well prepared me for my path. So let's flash forward a little bit to the current times. Today I take my learnings from the IU School of Education and to the students I teach and mentor to my life's body of work. on a daily basis. It's really true. I'm really reminded of my professor's words because I am a grand stickler for evaluation. Looking slick and cool doesn't cut it. If we think it's working, I really want to talk to the people, the end users, to make sure that it's having that impact that we want to have on people, to move folks from the thinking phase to the taking action. A few things today are as complicated are important to everyone as healthcare, even for very seasoned readers. In the United States, 47% of our adult population reads at basic or below basic reading levels. So imagine how difficult it is to navigate that healthcare system. I don't take that number lightly because I wake up every day, I get to bound out of bed and know that there's people that I will never meet, that I am hoping that I can serve a little and improve the quality of their lives just a tad. My IU training equipped me very well to adapt and to contribute to this ever-changing world, to develop instructional videos that were much more than talking heads, very interactive. I'm working for the Centers for Disease Control. I work for H1N1 and SARS. Food safety for people who had suffered during Hurricane Katrina, teen tobacco cessation, educational programs for our legislators to help raise awareness of health disparities, and the guidelines for over-the-counter drug medications. Visitors were drawn to this pulsating, the coolest thing I think in my career that might have had some impact on folks is we designed, with a team and I designed this 2,000 square foot traveling heart exhibit with all these kiosks. It was an instructional designer's dream come true. You walk through the doors of the mall, it was lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. And you went up to each one of those kiosks and learned about cardiovascular disease and heart health disparities. And there were ambassadors that were answering questions in what I like to call living room language, so that people speak. I went to school before there was web-based instruction, so I love building it in now. What I like about the teachings that I learned is that it was easily adaptable to the new technologies. I got a new phone and I figured out how to do it on the way home. I was so excited. Throughout my career, I've been very involved in training, and I'm going to be going this spring on a 10-state tour for the Agency of Healthcare Research and Quality, training health providers to incorporate shared decision-making between the patients, providers, the families. I think it's pretty cool. Pretty cool that we're at this place in our nation. I'm going to close tonight with one of my very favorite stories from the IST department. Back then, and I'm a lefty, and that means I'm one of the few people in my right mind. I tell that joke at home, nobody laughs, thank you so much for the chuckle. But at the time, there was this thing called the RICO lettering. Does anybody remember the RICO thing? When we made our signage, you had a pen here and a pen there, and it was a stylus. And so you had to really have great dexterity to move that stylus and lift it up at the right time. But being a lefty, I don't know if there's any others in the crowd, but you walk around with ink smeared hands forever, right? And so I practice and practice. And I feel like Denny was much like, he was a fantastic mentor to me. And so I think he was almost a little hard on me, and I appreciate it. And he was like, yeah, practice more and do it again. So finally I realized there was a student in my classroom who was just really great at it. And I went to him, I said, Dr. Pett, I would like to have the student conduct, I was Dr. Pett's teaching assistant for 3 semesters, so I'd like her to conduct this class. And he looked at me, I thought, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to go back again. And he said, Jann, I'm gonna read this because this stays in my brain. I'm thinking, uh-oh, and when he spoke, he said, Jann, today you have become a true educator. You've learned the very concept of each one, teach one. I was like, that is so cool. I love that, each one, teach one. Let's recognize their talents that each one of us have inside ourselves. I'm not a big one to hold trade secrets close to my vest. I really like to put it out there in the universe and help people move to that next step. So I know we all have stuff to teach, so I say, as in Dr. Pett's words, let's each one teach one, or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. I will continue to try to make the Indiana University School of Education proud. I am so thrilled about this. I'm going to put this plaque up. And my dogs and I share a private office, and they're going to really, I'm going to put it eye level for them too, you know. I am honored. I thank you so sincerely. Thank you very much, Indiana University School of Education. Thank you.
Our final recipient tonight is Stanley Warren. Warren is the retired Dean of Academic Affairs and Professor of Education at DePauw University. Warren is the author of Black America Represented on United States Postage Stamps, Chris Posadas High School, Hail to the Green, Hail to the Gold, the Senate Avenue YMCA for African American men and boys, and High Five, African American institutions that have strengthened the Indianapolis community. Warren is the author of more than 100 journal, magazine, and newspaper articles. He continues to write, consult, and speak on contemporary education issues and African American history. Warren is a Carnegie Fellow, John Hay Fellow, Lilly Fellow, and National Endowment for the Humanities Fellow. He was Governor Evan Bayh's appointee to the State Student Assistance Commission. Warren was also named a Distinguished Alumnus of the University of Indianapolis and was inducted into the Indianapolis Public Schools Hall of Fame. Prior to becoming Dean, Warren served as Associate Dean and Director of Black Studies at DePauw University. Warren has been a board member of the Indiana Historical Society, board member of the Historic Landmarks Foundation, and chair of its African American Landmarks Committee, board member and chair, board member of the Crispus Attucks Museum, life member of the Indiana University Alumni Association, board member of the University of Indianapolis Alumni Association, and member of 100 Black Men of Indianapolis. Warren has a BS in Business from Indiana Central College, now the University of Indianapolis, an MAT in Teacher Education and Anthropology from Indiana University, an EDS in Secondary Education and Administration from Indiana University, and an EDD in Higher Education from Indiana University. Stan, will you join us up here? Stan, you have spent your life as a tireless advocate for education and equity and equality in the state of Indiana and beyond. It is a privilege for me to recognize you as an IU School of Education Distinguished Alumnus. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all that has happened this evening, some really in particular more than others. I was going to tell a story. Let me thank, first of all, Rose Mays nominated me for this honor, and I really appreciate it. She's not here tonight, but I really appreciate what she's done for me. And I thought that I was going to tell a story about two nuns and myself who were in class together, but looking out over this audience, I think I'd better not tell that story. Instead, I think I'll tell a love story. I think that'll work better. You know, I came to Indiana University in 1963. I was going to take a summer course in 1963. Now remember, there were no cell phones, no internet. We only had one computer on campus. It was about the size of this board right here. a big ugly computer, and doctoral students were famous for walking around with the cards. You didn't leave your cards anywhere, your computer cards. You carried with them everywhere. You slept with them. I didn't destroy my cards till it was I think it was 12 years after I left here. I was so afraid to do anything with those cards. At any rate, I came here in the summer of '63. Lived in Indianapolis up to that time, had never been anywhere. And this was like going to another country. And I came to Bloomington that summer. I finally found where I was to stay, and the next day I had a class. And I went to try to find my class. I couldn't find it. And finally somebody said, "Your class has been moved to the Von Lee Theater." Now, those of you who've been here long enough, you know where the Von Lee is. It's down on Kirkwood. And they said it was off campus. So I had no idea where that was. So eventually I found it. I was late for class, of course. And the Von Lee is pretty good size. And I went into the Von Lee. It was dark. The lights were off. And there was some guy on the stage way up there making a speech. And I looked around. There were no seats left. So I stood leaning against the wall with my notebook and a pen, trying to take notes. I could hardly hear what he was saying. But after a while, the class was over and I turned the lights on, and I looked around, and there were lots of black students there. And I just, this is different from what I'd been told I was to expect. And I wondered what was going on. I found out the next day that the reason these black students were there these were mostly students from the South. And when I came here in '63, it was only $7 a credit hour. So I'd managed to scrape up $42, and I was taking 6 hours. And these students from the South, though, they all had plenty of money. So the goal, of course, was to find a woman who came from the South, but that's another story. The students from the South were getting a stipend. Every month they would get a check from one of the states, from Mississippi or Georgia or Alabama, what have you. And I came to realize that what they were doing, of course, was trying to keep from integrating the schools in the South. And the schools are very much segregated, as were the schools in Indianapolis. Up to that point, I had not had many white instructors until I went to Indiana Central. And so it was a good time. I buddied up with a couple of guys, one guy in particular named Raymond Washington from Virginia, and we were cruising around the campus trying to figure things out, but we were very comfortable because there were many, many black students. I think there must have been probably 30,000 students during the summer during that time. And I would guess that nearly half of those students were black. So it was a very different kind of campus. And as we went around, I won't say what Raymond was doing because he wasn't married at the time, but anyway, I was having a great time on campus. It was wonderful. And as a result, I fell in love with Indiana University. And after that, of course, I came back every summer, ended up finishing these degrees that we've talked about here. And since that time, I've followed Indiana University. I haven't been on campus very much, but I've followed the university and all that it has done. I've followed the career of Dean Gonzalez and several other people. Somebody asked me a while ago, "Well, do you see anybody that you know?" I said, most of them are dead. And I'm sorry to say that. Because many of the professors, of course, were much older than I was. And of course, I think they're all gone, unfortunately. Most of them are gone, let me put it that way. But at any rate, I fell in love with Indiana University, and that stays with me to this day. So much so that I'm wondering what's going on at Midnight Madness. I really wanted to be there, but of course, this was much more important to me. So I want to thank you very much, and I will go away from here with the biggest smile on my face that you've ever seen. Thank you.
Please join me once again in giving all our honorees another round of applause. And I'd like to just take a moment to add to a tidbit to Stan's story. Many of those Southern blacks who came to study at Indiana University were able to do so because their own states would not permit them to pursue advanced study. They, in many cases, attended historically black institutions, and when it came time to pursue other degrees at higher levels, the South institutions would not permit that to happen. So they came north. And Indiana University was one of those institutions that opens its doors for those African American students from the South to obtain higher level degrees. And many of them ended up studying education, because in those days that was one of the very few fields that was available for African Americans to pursue. And in the course of my own deanship, from time to time, as I travel around the country, I have come across some of those African Americans who obtained their degrees here and then went back to the South. And many of them have established illustrious careers and made wonderful contributions to their communities and their institutions. And I thought, what a tragedy for Indiana University to lose that history entirely. And so I endeavored to commission an oral history study from the Department of History, John Bortner, who some of you may know, and some of his doctoral students are now doing an oral history of those who are still living and who have been able and willing to participate in that project. And Kelly Kish, who is here, one of our alums and a special assistant to the president, is going to compile some of those and use them as part of the university's bicentennial celebration in the year 2020. And I do see Charlie Nels, who has now joined us, and Charlie was one of those students who came and studied here from Arkansas, if I remember correctly. So welcome, Charlie. Thank you all very much. You guys just script.
Actually, he stole it into the script. But that's okay. We'd like to thank all of you for being here. Those recipients and those with whom you'd like to have pictures, please stay afterwards. We really do appreciate your attendance tonight. And my guess is that if you'd like to, Stanley might share that story about the two nuns if you want to stick around for that too. Thank you all. Have a great evening. Good night.